Okay, let's try that. Yeah, there we go. Good morning, Ave cohort. It is 9 a.m., so we're here for Pilum Teaches DCS, where we're going to show you how to do things in DCS. Today we're going to be going up with the F-4E Phantom 2. Going to be working with guided weapons and making the most of Jester. And that's going to be the theme of today. The F-14BU is on its way and should be here this coming week, which means potentially Teamwork Tuesday, or I'm sorry, Tomcat Tuesday. We will have some new things to go into and just kind of fly around with the aircraft itself, which should be a good time. But with all of that, let's go ahead and hop on over to our friend the F4, and we're going to go over as much as we can here with making the most of Jester. Good morning, Chief. At the moment, we have some coffee. Just doing some coffee-related activities and things. All right. So here we have our F4. We're just about ready to start the jets. We're going to have a couple of minutes there for that. Starting on the outer pylons and working inward. We have GBU-10s. Of course, we have our defensive armament of Sidewinders on either special pylon. On each special pylon, we have a Shrike and a Maverick missile. Going to be working with those today as well. Some 750 bombs, the M117s on the underside, 3 Sparrows of the Foxtrot variety, and the Pave Spike Pod. Things we're going to be using that to designate here today. And of course the Maverick, and then mirrored loadout for the GBU-10 on the other side. Yep, yeah, shame it was a week too late, but you know what? I'm okay with that because we're going to be getting it anyway, so we will manage. Put our bucket on. Good morning. Good so far. We'll see how good today's flying goes.
If you're done with the generators, I can start the alignment. Roger that. Okay, what alignment? Alrighty, stored heading alignment. What alignment are we going for? Canopy down and locked, lights out and stripes aligned.
All right, so while Jester is getting the aircraft aligned, I'm going to talk about some of the important things here with the F4, and it's all stuff that we have talked about in the past, but we're here today, so we're going to be covering it all over here again. One of the biggest features with Jester and the F4, and this will be something that we should have in the BU, and we'll see how this one works, especially with the JDAMs as an available option, is the bombing table. The bombing table has a lot of options that are available to it that we can have Jester do the limited things with the bombing computer and the board the aircraft and make our pipper and everything else as accurate as it can. The ones we're going to be using a lot today are going to be this target find, which is required for anything dealing with the targeting pod, and WRCS AGM-45. The WRCS AGM-45 is specifically for loft mode with the Shrike. as basically what you are doing with the Shrike in this mode is solving a math problem. Yeah, no, it absolutely can be there for that, and DCS having a pre-built setting for most aircraft for the Warthog throttle can really make that work. And we know, having been here a bunch of times before, that our friend the SA-8 lives about here. So we want to make sure that we get the right altitude encoded, 3956. Doesn't have to be exact.
Go primary sync now.
But it doesn't have to be close.
Roger.
Basically what this is doing is, when you are flying in the jet and you're getting ready to launch a Shrike in this loft mode, where the pipper is pointed, like this actual little pipper here on the HUD, is trying to solve the hypotenuse of the triangle. And you're basically trying to tell the onboard system that when that line matches a point in space where the altitude that you have encoded into the WRCS lines up, to give you the cues to go ahead and pull the nose up to loft the Shrike. You know, it's known how long that motor is going to burn for. It's known how long that it's going to be flying in the air for. And so it can get close enough that the Shrike's onboard seeker head, providing it's tuned correctly for the system that you're trying to kill, can then find the radar and successfully engage it. Our alignment is complete. Our aircraft is ready to rock and roll, so let's go ahead and get the chocks off the jet. As part of making the most of Jester, there are a handful of commands that you're going to want to make sure are available. The Jester UI action is going to want to be bound, because that's how we get into the menu in the first place. You're going to be using that one a lot. But then there are also the context action for short, hold, and double click. If you've got the extra buttons to spare, you can absolutely bind all of the other individual commands. However, the one that I find the most useful is the short, hold, and double click. And if you do a short press, less than a couple of seconds, a hold for more than a couple of seconds, or a quick double tap, that is more than enough to interact contextually with Jester. And that tells him to do different things based on the context of the actions you're currently taking. Especially in the air-to-air arena of getting him to cycle which mode that he's got the radar in terms of whether it's a nose-on chase, a tail chase,
Roger.
Tracking a target versus locking onto one, so that you can just follow him with the bug and increase his accuracy a little bit when you do go ahead and push into STT mode.
Yes, sir. Chalk's out. Okay, sir. You're all set. Have a safe flight. Disconnecting.
Context button is going to be very useful for us in that regard. Plan today is to
about this one. Let's do it.
Plan today is to go ahead and attack our usual friend there over at Yucca Pass. We'll get in with using Jester and the targeting pod in its own limited fashion.
So we planning to go downtown on this one? What alignment are we going for? Okay, stored heading it is. X. Oh, I'll be puckering for this one.
And while we are on the way, let's go ahead and just give ourselves a waypoint. Trim is set to 3 down. very much appreciate the shout-outs on the other streaming channel from the other night. Definitely thank you for those. Thanks for the follow there, Air Larry. It is a very good jet, very hands-on jet. Speaking of very hands-on jet, there's one parked on the ramp. We do have a short cruise ahead of us just to get back towards our zone. We did a lot of crazy things in the 50s to try and, you know, scramble jet fighters and interceptors for hypothetical Russian bombers. All right. Flaps are down.
Engine's good, airspeed off the peg. 80 knots. And 100.
150, start easing back on the stick here. Nose is coming up. Let the jet fly itself away.
Gears moving. Flaps up, gear up.
I understand that that particular conundrum. All right, gear and flaps up. Let's go ahead and get into our Jester menu.
Okay, nails. 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock.
Quiet there for a minute, Jester. The full F stick method for taking off with the jet is another valid one, especially when you're very heavy, because the goal is to try and get the nose wheel up off the deck as quickly as possible. But you do have to greatly reduce stick pressure as soon as the nose does come up, so you don't over-rotate the jet and drag your tail over the pavement, which is never a good time. So the Jester radial menu, this one is, again, something that you're going to be getting used to a lot and making a lot of use of. Different UHF radio options can be seen through there to have him dial in different frequencies. 200 is not a problem for the jet down on the ground, but I would definitely try and make sure that you are in the air before that time. If you're dragging a very heavy load, you might end up dragging the wheels for a few moments on the pavement at 200 knots or more. But with the radio menu here for the UHF radio, you can have Jester switch which modes his radio is listening to, tune various assets, but the biggest thing to remember for the jet is that you only have one radio. And right now I have command over the radio and navigation systems. If you tell Jester to tune a radio frequency, he will tune the frequency and then take command of the radio himself, which you can do by pressing these little buttons here on either side of the lights to toggle which radio is the one that's on at the moment. In that regard, you can kind of have two frequencies tuned, but you'll have to pass command back and forth in order to listen to either radio at a time, because you only have the one. You do technically have an ADF that you can listen to as well, but in terms of fussing about with communicating on different radio frequencies and bands, you only have the UHF radio, which also means that you are limited to frequencies above 220 AM. Radar options. You can tell him to change how he's operating with the radio, whether he's in an active mode where the radio is on, whether or not he will autofocus. You can have him do an IFF check, either using both the combat tree system if it's installed on the jet, or only the traditional IFF system. You can change the bore sight mode to tell him to enter bore sight in this regard. You could do this in other ways too, but this is just, they're on the wheel, so it's important to go ahead and just cover them while we're here. Different aspects for providing you the missile gates to determine whether or not you are in range, because that is set manually by him. Scan elevations. This can tell you what altitude band you're trying to search for in the radar. Again, the F-4 is a very hands-on sort of jet. If you're looking at more modern aircraft, like the F-14 even, taking the one step forward where it's got a multi-bar scan, where it is scanning a range of altitudes, and Jester will sweep the radar up and down. He doesn't do that so much in the F-4 unless you tell him to do so. And what this is telling you is that at 30 nautical miles, I want to scan a range that is going to incorporate 0 to 10,000 feet. At 30 miles, I'm going to do 10 to 20,000 feet, so on and so forth. Generally speaking, unless you tell him otherwise, he is searching on the center band of the aircraft, which is roughly parallel to your current altitude. But you can also give him some, different directions of, like, I want to scan 3,500 feet under the jet. I want to scan 3,500 feet above the jet. So you're having Jester tilt the dish to try and find the target easier. Scan type. Generally, he can have a default setting of either doing a 50 nautical mile narrow or wide scan or a 25 nautical mile narrow or wide scan. Right now he's in a 50-mile wide scan, trying to survey the largest chunk of sky that he can in order to try and find a target. Focus target. What this means is that he's going to put the little target acquisition bugs on top of a contact and follow that contact around as long as it's in front of the jet. Lock target. Same sort of deal, except he'll actually push it into single target track mode. Air-to-ground weapons, kind of a misnomer, as he's not really doing anything with the air-to-ground weapons at the moment. It's just a matter of, are you going to be on TV video, or are you going to be using the Pave Spike pod? Jester will automatically enable these two systems, depending upon what other ways you have set yourself up for weapon release programs and what weapon station or weapon type you're trying to employ. But you can use that to manually have those things turn on if for whatever reason they are not. Just keep in mind that if you're trying to get the Mavericks to turn on faster, the Mavericks do have a 3-minute window where they have to warm up before they are ready for service. Navigation is probably the one that I use the most in this radio menu, where you can tell him to go to a given flight plan and return to it. You can set different areas as a hold point. Divert to is another good one, because we're going to be using divert to, map marker, own markers, and TGT1 that we just made a little bit ago. But you can also look at airfields, which will have a bunch of airfields that are available, or individual assets. We'll set a waypoint to where those things are, so you can try and fly to them. Understand, though, that if you've been flying the jet for a while, or your alignment was bad on takeoff, you might have considerable INS drift, so your waypoint may not be exactly over the target by the time you try and get out to that point. And of course, TACAN, you can tell him what mode to be in, what channel he's going to be on, tune a ground station, tune assets, just in case you don't know whatever the individual code is, and you kind of want him to do the work. You can use that to get him to tune those different items. systems. You can tell him to do, I want multiple chaff to be released per impulse. I want a program. I can do the same thing with flares. And I can ask what the quantities are because he's actually got those dials.
6.
You can have him jettison flares, turn on or turn off a jammer, and turn on and turn off the AVTR recorder, which is also where you can actually turn on or off the killer soundtrack, which we'll do in the jet here a little bit later on. Crew contract, Jester presence. You can disable Jester from here, which is useful mostly for mission editors and campaign makers, where you've got specific Jester scripting and things that you want to have happen, rather than whatever traditional things Jester is doing at that particular moment. Or you can just leave him in auto and he'll just do what he normally does. Jester talking, I use this one especially when we're connecting to or disconnecting from a tanker. One of the things Jester kind of does in his own annoying way is he provides you help when you're trying to get on the tanker. You know, come forward 5, come back 10, you're charging the boom, you're getting ready to fall off, and those kinds of things. The issue that I have with that in terms of Jester is that the length of time it takes to give a status or a correction, like you're charging the boom. It is easy, if you are flying normally, to get into a position where new corrective action would be needed to be given to you in the window while he's talking. So it queues up the next line. So for example, if you're trying to connect to the tanker and he's like, you're charging the boom, and you have already, before he even said the words, reduced power a little bit and increased power again, so you can kind of shuffle backwards and come forward a little bit to get back into good alignment and good position. In the time frame that he says those words, it could be a matter of you're drifting aft, you're drifting up, you're drifting down. And now he's queuing all of those extra things, and as time goes on, the longer and longer you're on the tanker, he's now 3 minutes behind, 4 minutes behind, 5 minutes behind. So he's trying to talk to you to give you corrective action, but all of the information he's giving you is way out of date and not helpful. So I find it's just easier to just not have him help me at all and just fly the lights. So I will come in here and go silence, please. And then once I'm done doing everything with the tanker that I need to do and I've disconnected and flown away from a little bit, I'll have him talk to me again. The ejection selector switch, by default, he will kick himself out of the jet and cares nothing about you. I usually set it on both when I'm with him. That way, if he leaves, he takes me with him. Countermeasures dispensing. Manual is me and only me are going to be able to release countermeasures. Jester, he will release countermeasures based on the situation, because he has, you know, if you're locked up by a SAM site, for example, he'll start pumping chaff a few at a time. So that's the Jester interactive wheel, and that's very helpful in setting ourselves
30.
up.
Diversion steering set.
And so he's set our diversion steering to our new divert waypoint. He's going to go ahead and cruise around towards that waypoint. And again, we got ourselves a short little flight to get set up for our target area. I'm actually going to go ahead and set the TACAN up for Creech Air Force Base.
We've got nailed 1 o'clock.
It's 87 X-ray. Check that in TACAN mode here real quick, and there it is. And now we're going out here to use a Shrike first against an SA-8 system, which for those who have looked at the armament tab and checked the various seeker heads that are available, the SA-8 is not on the list. but it is in the same sort of band for the Mark 49 Mod 0 or Mod 1, or is it Mark 50? I'll look when I get back on the ground. But it is able to be tracked and shot at by one of those radar bands, which I can also track, just for your own information there. The SA-5 search radar, the SA-6 search track system, the straight flush, and the SA-3 low blow track radar. So you can get a few different targets with that particular warhead and seeker head on it. Now again, we know our target area is over here, and it is about 39, almost 60 feet. So we're going to hit right control B, double check our bombing table. Yeah, 3950 is close enough. We want it to be close if we're going to be using these in loft mode.
Roger.
If the altitude is too different, then you probably run into a good chance where the weapon is going to overshoot the target or undershoot the target, because you're going to be either lofting too early or too late. And the Shrike is a decent weapon, but it does have limitations. It's carried here on our right pylon station. First, it looks like an old model Sparrow because it is an old model Sparrow. That was the base foundation for the weapon. Relatively inexpensive, but somewhat limited. It doesn't have a memory to know where the system was when it was shot at. So if it stops transmitting information, i.e. the operator shuts the radar down, while the missile's in flight, it will lose track. It also doesn't have a wide range of frequencies that the seeker head is tuned to, so you do have to make sure that you've selected the right seeker head before leaving the base, or whatever systems you expect. It can be fired in two different modes, either in direct, which is largely you pointed at the target, usually for a short range approach, like I'm dealing with a pop-up threat and it's inside of like 7 miles and I can see it. Like I can see that it's right in given spot A, B, or C. Point the aircraft towards the target, pick the nose up a little bit, 10 or 12 degrees, so that the seeker head can see it as soon as it comes off the rail, and send it on its way. But it's going to be a close range shot. For something like what we're doing here, we want to try and attack from a longer range, so we're going to use the loft feature. Which is why we need the WRCS. Have Jester set that up.
Roger.
As he's basically telling the onboard computer, this is the altitude the target is sitting on, so when all the parameters are good, then it will tell the pilot when to pull the nose up. Shrike also has a very narrow field of view, which is only about 3 degrees or so. And it also really doesn't care about what radar band that it sees. If it's in its search band and bracket, it will try and attack it. Which sounds great on paper, but if we were doing something like a foothold style mission, and I'm coming up here on this site, and there are multiple of the same type radars, or multiple of the same radars in this band frequency that the Shrike is trying to track and detect, there's pretty good odds that it might attack something else that it finds way out here, like Paiute Mesa, for example. There's another radar. It's an SA-8 type or an SA-6 or whatever.
SA-6.
And I can see it in line with how I'm attacking. If Shrike sees that one before it sees the one I intend, it will try to attack that even if it's out of range. Because it's really just got a very simple, if this is the band that I'm tuned for, try and attack it. We're going to turn on our flight director because these needles are going to pop up when we select our Shrike, which is the AGM-45. This is for the loft mode only. If you're going to use it in direct, Use direct. Set it up for ARM. And master arm on. Now we're looking for an SA8 that is down here near the site. And it's our first system of concern. The 6 is going to be over there. We might deal with him a little bit later on with another strike. I do like repeating weapon use to, in case people catch the stream later.
We have a new bogey. Left 35, 41 miles, 21,500. IFF's valid, that is a friendly.
And we'll start with the SA8.
We have a contact. Left 35 degrees, 45 miles, 21,500.
The other limitation with strike to keep in mind is that it is a slow
IFF
missile.
returns on this one, he paints.
It's not like Harm that's going to get up to Mach Snot and be able to cruise out 50-something miles and only slow down right before it hits the target. It's a weapon that loses a lot of speed and gas and gusto very quickly and falls on the target at about 400 knots. What that means, though, is that if you were to, say, shoot at it at the same time an SA2 or 3 system shoots at you,
Mud, 12 o'clock, SA8.
your missile is not going to beat theirs if you fired at the same time. So defend. Alright, so what we're hearing is the Shrike picking up the radar impulses, and the reason why they jitter like that is that it's listening to the combination search and track system of the SA8. Now, we're already close enough that we can get loft queue information. And we're about 10 miles away. The indexers light up when you're in good parameters for the jet. Now, our actual target is down here, so I'm going to point the nose at that first, and then pick it up and throw the weapon. Actually, as close as we are now, I might switch to direct and throw it that way so I don't overshoot it, because we are only about 10 miles away. But that's the cue. Basically, the indexer tells you what direction you need to move the aircraft nose to get a good launch. We're going to keep pulling the nose up slow and smooth until the indexer circles light up, indicating that you're on, quote, good AOA, or in good parameters for the weapon. Hold the pickle button, and then every pylon for the Shrike that you've got selected at that particular moment will come off the rail in sequence. So if you do have more than one Shrike and you're not trying to use all of your Shrikes at once to try and guarantee a hit on the target, once you get good at using it, you'll definitely be trying to employ them just one at a time. Only select the one pylon that you actually want to use and get rid of towards the target. Now I did mention I'm going to change to direct because our SAM site is right here. We're about 10 miles away, and we're already close enough that if I point the nose down and then point the nose up to try and heave-ho the missile out there, it's probably going to fall very short. So we're basically going to do what we do in like the F-100, and we're going to loft it manually. All right, so we are now in direct mode. There's no cues. Put my pipper close to the target. Magnum. Now I want to get away from him in case he shoots at us. So we're just going to come back around and head a little bit southeast. Put the autopilot on. And we have definitely overshot the SAM site. Unfortunate, but we will have another chance later on against the SA-6. Right now, though, the SA-8 is definitely going to be a problem for us, so we need to get rid of him. Probably shouldn't have lofted it quite that high, but that's okay. Get the successes and the failures here on the channel when it comes to using weapons. Alright, so what we're doing at the moment is we're setting ourselves up for dive toss mode, which is a radar-assisted bombing method for dropping iron bombs. Jester puts the radar in a bore sight cage, and if you are using a human Rio, or human Wizzo rather, so Air Force jet, you know, they will need to do the same, set the ranging information down to bore sight and ranging to 10 miles. This is where we use that Jester contextual button that we talked about. What we're going to be doing is telling Jester to attack a specific spot or capture it with the radar, and that will provide release information to the bombs. It's going to be a little quick because I'm going to be basically trying to race the lock to launch timer for the SA-8. And we're going to be using a contextual menu, the contextual button we talked about earlier. Going to be a short press once we have the pipper over the target, which tells Jester this is the area that I want to attack. And I've already set up my bomb ripples and distance and quantity. We're going to be dropping 2 bombs on the target. Pick the nose up here to see the target area. You can see where Mr. Osa is located, and contextual button press.
Okay, captured.
Button press on the pickle, pick the nose up, bombs come off the jet. In the radar mode, you can do all kinds of things with it, because I just threw bombs rather than using direct. Let's come up and see our handiwork there on that. Looks like he's very dead. Let's go ahead and look at him real quick from overhead. If you're looking to drop Mark 82s over the target like Snake Eyes, you can drop them that way in direct. Generally, I set the pipper to like 140 mils on that one, but that does work out to like 450, 500 knots at 500 feet or 400 at 400 feet. Either way should be fine. And as the target gets ready to pass under the jet and moves through the pipper, you'll go ahead and drop your stack that way. Mr. Osa is very dead, and looks like a bomb, one of the 750s, landed right next to him. So he had an extremely emotional event. Yes, it would. The SA-8 is designed to shoot down helicopters as one of its primary functions, or low-flying, fast-moving aircraft. It is an older missile system, yes, but it does not have an appreciable bottom floor to its radar ability to search for you there. So it could shoot you at that altitude if it sees you from far enough away. The biggest detriment that it has is the lock-to-launch window, how long it takes between acquiring your aircraft with the tracking radar before able to hand off that weapon information to the missile and then shoot at you. It is a little longer, about 20-ish seconds. But, you know, if you're coming in low and fast without a hill or anything else really between you and the target, there's pretty good odds that it'll shoot at you before you can get close enough to attack it otherwise. Alright, so we've dealt with the SA-8. There are other systems that are threatening us down there. Namely the AAA weapons and all of that are present. So our next target is going to be over here, which is going to be the KS-19 and fire can battery. And they're at an altitude of 4,100 feet. And we're going to attack it with a GBU-10 using the targeting pod on the aircraft. A few things that we need to do is to go into our bombing table, pull up target find, tell it what bomb we're going to be using so that the drag coefficient can be properly set. In this case, GBU-10. Our run-in speed is going to be about 450 knots true airspeed. We're going to drop this one from a little higher up, so we'll call it 15,000 feet. And our target altitude is
44 miles.
4,134 feet. So we're going to change our target altitude here
IFF returns on this one, he paints.
to, what was it? 41, we'll call it 4130. It's close enough. Dive angle, I'm really not going to put one on it. That's fine. The release advance, if you wanted a bomb other than the first bomb to hit the target, like if I was dropping a stick of Mark 82s, I want the fourth bomb in the stick to hit the target directly, so that way I can, just put the target area under the pipper, rather than what I actually just want to blow up and walk bombs over the top of it. Aim short on purpose. Like, you can do it that way. Put a little release advance. Instead, I'm just going to use that one. There's no interval because it is just the GBU-10. So we've coded everything that we need. Tell Jester and close. It is important.
New bogey. Left 15, 33 miles, 17,500.
It is important to have Jester take a moment or two
Target paint.
to actually set these things up. Sometimes that's why I come in and I will tell him a few times to go ahead and do these things. So that way if he was interrupted with anything, he will go ahead and finish doing what he was doing. Setting up all the settings in the right way. Let's go ahead and select target find and bombs. And we can see the pave spike information right there on our little glass. This is an older targeting pod. It doesn't have a lot of the fancy bells and whistles that newer pods have, because that's just how technology works. And icing on the cake, Jester really doesn't do anything with this one like he does with the F-14. I can't use the Jester menu, at least not yet. They've been saying they've been working on it, but they've been working on that since the jet was released. So how do we go ahead and use this pod? Well, there are temporary controls that are listed in the F4's area there for WISO antenna hand control and the hand control trigger and the challenge button. Those buttons are the ones that we need to get ourselves going. The challenge button that I've got bound controls the zoom, which is basically wide field of view or narrow field of view on the pave spike pod. The half action cycles what mode the pod is in, because it is in a snowplow right now, but as we get the target, get over the target, we want to try and actually use the pod. We will half action the trigger first to change it from snowplow to I want to aim with it. And then a full action to actually engage the laser and provide targeting information for us. Adjust the brightness here just a little bit so it's a little easier for us to see. There are two basic acquisition modes for the pave spike pod. The easiest one to use is the 12 o'clock position, which is basically pilot puts the jet at the target, puts the pipper on the target, and tells the WISO, yeah, what I'm looking for is about in there. Because otherwise you're basically looking through a tiny toilet paper tube going, I kind of know where the target's at, and I'm just going to try and sweep and scan for it and hope for the best. And, if you're far enough away, that might be viable. I don't know how Trigger does it exactly when he's in the back seat, but he's just got a way of making that work. But for our purposes, we're going to go ahead and come on over. And I know I haven't been here before, that our target area is right about there. So as I come back and look at the pod, we can see that. I've just half-actioned the trigger, and we can see the blinking lights here on the left. They're solid right now because I paused the mission. The blinking means that it is in the area track type mode, and that it has not been fully acquisitioned for the target just yet. We do have a bomb release point and the bomb fall line, but those are not as accurate until we've actually ranged the target with the laser. So I know it's going to be about there. We're going to go ahead and full action the trigger and zoom in. Kind of see our array of friends, and that's a good spot right there. The pod can't really rate super fast as well, so you need to be careful using that with the jet.
Passing 500.
Jester will call out airspeeds for you
510 knots.
to let you know whether or not you're going too fast. But at this point, the laser is on. Bomb fall line's coming up. And good chunk. Now we need to try and fly in such a way that we can maintain our target lock. I'm going to pause here again in just a moment. For the pilot, over here on the right, this is the pod limits for the pave spike. Anywhere in the green, and you're okay. The dotted lines give you a warning about you're getting almost out of pod limits. The pod can look further down and to the left than what it can to the right. So try and keep that needle in this green zone where you can. And understand that too, that the Wizzo might be trying to fight the pod and you're flying to maintain lock over the target area. Impact. So we'll go ahead and we'll half action the trigger button again. That will reslave the pod to snowplow mode. And once that's done, I'm going to pause again, go down and look at our handiwork. That GBU has definitely killed our gun battery. Then we'll climb up a little bit, we'll select the other pylon, and we're going to repeat that process on a Shoka group that's also down there. Just to show it again. Now, Jester, the one thing he is good at with this pod, in terms of, understanding how we can best make him work for us, is that he will keep the pod largely centered wherever you have left it. So it will work as an area type track on the target. Now that said, you can outrate the pod, especially the slower pod, which is not the fast track one. We're not using fast track today, we're actually using just the older default pave spike. So it's easy to outrate the pod, to be able to turn faster than the pod can respond. So if you do have to manually grab it and try and force it to slew back in the other direction, you know, that's something that you might have to pay attention for as well, especially if you got to maneuver a little aggressively after dropping a bomb. Now we're up about 16,000 feet. Using a laser weapon, the biggest thing is you want to make sure that the bomb gets into the zone where the seeker on the bomb can see the laser. And as long as it can do that, a lot of the other things that you're setting up for Jester matter a little less, like in terms of release altitude and all of that. Here's our target group. On half action the trigger, full action the trigger. We got solid lines, that means that we're in good shape. Holding the pickle button down now.
490, almost 500 now.
We are a little fast, so I'm going to pull back in the throttle a little bit. I'm basically trying to fly the dots that are around the pipper,
480.
because that gives me the steering directions that I need to try and attack
460.
the target as indicated. Drop the nose just a little bit to guarantee that we hook the bomb. Almost.
Passing 430.
Pickle. Zoom out a little bit. Recenter. I'm going to try and come off here to the right. So we can avoid the SI-6. Move the crosshair a little bit. Keeping the pod in good parameters. And we didn't hit him. Let's see how close we got. Actually don't know where that bomb went. We'll have to look that one up in TAC view. Only assume that we didn't actually have that one hook. We might have been going fast enough that the bomb overshot the target, and then the seeker head was not able to see it. That's a solvable problem, though. That's something that you can take care of with a little bit more nose down at the target on weapon release, just to guarantee that the bomb is actually seeing the seeker. But you can use the pod in that regard to buddy laze for somebody else. Just have to make sure that the laser is on and doing what it needs to do, and then it's on the right frequency, which is all settable in the back seat. There's no front seat options to change that outside of using Jester to, you know, set it up again. All right. Undo dive toss again. A little fast for those too. Yeah, he might still have everything else encoded for that. So let's go ahead and reset for dive toss. And 117. Let's drop that down a little bit to 400 knots. 12,000 feet.
Roger.
Oh, you know what? Our release altitude, I didn't change that. See, that was the other thing too, that I didn't reset for the right altitude on the bombing table. Doesn't need to be exact, just needs to be close. As a middle Cold War workhorse, accuracy was achieved through quantity in some cases. We got a bomb left though, so let's see if we can't thin the herd on this one a little bit. Out there's good.
Okay, captured.
It might be close. Alright, so we're going to grab another Shrike. Well, we do have a Maverick on board, actually. Now that I think about it, we should get rid of that too while we're here. So we're going to go direct, TV, which is for Mavericks and Walleyes and GB8s. Set our reticle depression to 45 mils. I don't need to tell Jester anything else on that one. He's not going to help us for Mavericks. We just need to make sure that we activate the TV. Now at this point it is going to take about 3 minutes while it warms up. So we're just going to go ahead and cruise on out for about a minute and a half, turn back around and come back in. For the Maverick, one of our controls that we need to use is the air refueling release button. And the hand control unit that we would use to steer the bullpup missile as well for the pilot. What the air refueling release does when it's on is it allows you to interface with the Maverick and steer the Seeker. And when you release, it will attempt to capture whatever it can find under the Seeker. Now we're using Maverick Bs today, which have a fixed narrow field of view. And our daytime TV only. But if we were using the Delta Mavericks or the Gulf Mavericks for a later type mission, we could step the field of view by actioning our trigger to toggle between narrow and wide.
Hey, what's our fuel?
4,700 pounds and close to home. We're fine, Jester. .45 mils down on the air-to-ground pipper puts the pipper roughly in line with the Maverick Seeker head. So you can put the pipper on top of the target. And that should be close to then look down at the screen and find our whatever friend it is you're looking to introduce to a Maverick. Our target area at Yucca Pass is a little cloud locked right now, but the arm light is up, which means that Maverick is ready. So let's go ahead and action that front trigger, and now we have our Maverick Seeker head display. There's the runway. There's Yucca Pass. And go on and find ourselves something to destroy. Press that air refueling button. You can slew the seeker head around a little bit. And there's a vehicle right kind of here. Steady up on it and let go. It's locked. Press the pickle button, rifle. And the weapon is on its way. Jester doesn't help you there with anything at all, but that is the principle for employing it. We'll also make some time for bullpup today too. What do we have in the way of friends, Overlord?
Overlord 1-1, Uzi 1, request bogey dope. Uzi 1, Overlord 1-1, Bra 069.
6-9 for 50.
Cold.
It's out here, they're defending Alamo. There's pretty good odds we'll have to fight our way back towards the target area as we were about due for our MiG-21 friends to start showing up. So we got a chance to use the Sparrow and Sidewinder too. For now though, let's go ahead and go get some weapons. And we'll grab some more guided weapons. Let's do another Shrike so we can loft one at that SA-6 that's out there. Some bullpups, because those are always just fun in general. Might grab a walleye as well. You know, a weird loadout, but we'll make it work. Yeah, the GB-8 Hobo is the 2,000-pound class weapon, which is basically a Mark 84 with an electro-optical guidance kit on it. EO and laser guidance both came out at about the same time. You know, the Maverick is an older missile. It's a mid-70s early design. That was basically the bullpup is nice and all, but the manual guidance on that one, because it is a manual command line of sight or MACLOS weapon, was not very efficient. And pilots having to fly behind the missile to get the best steering possible out of the weapon were really in a position where ZU-23 gunners and ZPU-1 gunners and things could just shoot up the smoke trail and stood very good odds of hitting the F-4 that launched the weapon, or F-100 that launched the weapon. So we really needed a fire and forget type system to give our pilots the best chance. And that's where we came up with Maverick. But we also had issues with just getting weapons on target, because just dropping iron bombs everywhere, even with radar guided systems or radar assisted systems, was not accurate enough to hit bridges and other point targets and things like that. And so, you know, we had people come up with a TV-guided program that relied on contrast. So if you had a good contrast lock, you could identify the target and the weapon could steer itself there. And the idea of the laser, which early models of the F-4's laser designator system were basically a wall panel the Wizzo had that just shined a light outside the back part of the cockpit. But, you know, of course, the laser's vulnerabilities are clouds, haze, atmospheric events. Those could all block the laser.
Flaps, pressure, warning lights, anti-skid.
To make it worthless to attack the target. Jester didn't have anything to say good or bad about that landing. Okay, crossing the active. It's going to leave the drogue chute behind for the drogue chute monkeys. Lower our seat here again. Alright, so let's get gas in the jet and carry up another Sparrow. We'll bring some snake eyes just in case. I mentioned bullpup, so we're going to carry a couple of those of the B variety. A's and B's, it's the motor that's different between the two. Otherwise, they are pretty identical. Mark 49 Mod 1, that's the one that we were using to attack the SA-8. We're going to use that to attack the straight flush as well. And we'll just carry one on both sides. The special weapons pylon can only carry a certain amount of weapons and a certain weight. And you can carry a Maverick on it, but not 3. You can carry pairs of things like GBU-12s, or cluster bombs, Mark 82s, Mark 81s, Mark 20 Snake Eyes, Bractus bombs, but anything sincerely heavy on the inner pylons that's going to take away your special rails for the Sidewinder. So keep those things in mind if you're choosing a loadout.
Request refueling. Request rearming. Copy.
Okay. The internal cells for the fuselage do refill pretty quick. If you are doing air refueling, generally speaking, unless you're trying to top off your tanks on purpose, and if you're actually part of a multi-aircraft strike group, I would only get up to about 9.5, 10,000 pounds, which is fairly quick to refuel to. You can kind of see we're already at 5,700. We were down for, like 4,000 pounds before. But the wing tanks, your large wing tanks there, take forever to refill. So getting the last couple thousand pounds is painful and a little slow. They do, yes. They do transfer from the bags into the wings, so it is possible for you to cheese it a little bit. But remember, too, that the F4's wing bag or centerline bag logic for refilling those fuel tanks is, I see some internal fuel has been used. I'm going to bring the internal fuel level back up to this point. That switch for Air Larry. Your external tank feed. Bottom is the center line, up is outboard tanks, but the fuel tank pump logic determines that, when you turn that switch on, whatever your internal fuel level is, it will wait until you have drained part of that amount, and then it will try and refill it to that amount. Yeah, you can set it to external and take off. And then it will slowly pump out from the bags. But what you'll notice with the fuel tank is that you'll see your internal fuel tick down to like 1,105 pounds, and then it will refill to like 1,175 or 1,190. And then it will drain again, and then it'll refill, and then it'll drain again, and then it'll refill. It's not like a more modern aircraft where it's like, okay, I want to do all of my gas coming out of the bags. Okay, yeah, we'll just hit the switch, and when the bags are empty, then we'll switch to internals. It's not the way it works in the jet. It drags it from the internal system first, and then we'll pump gas from the bags into the jet at different levels so that the pumps are not running all the time. And as we can see, we are about halfway through refilling the wing tanks, and we have gone from a nice quick refueling to a very slow one. Yep, yeah, it'll draw from your inboard supply first, and then once it has drained about 1,000 pounds worth of gas, it will trigger the pump for the fuel tank, and then it will refill the internal tank with the external tank's gas. But you can't draw from, if you bring 3 bags up, you can't draw from all 3 of them simultaneously in the F4. You do have to select either the outboard panel for the wings or the centerline bag. If you were doing a cat-based mission, that would draw from the centerline first, because the center rack that's here, if it's on, it will prohibit you from shooting the front 2 sparrows. So you'll only have 2 sparrows in the back if you go to get into a dogfight, if you're carrying anything on the center line. And then it's just because the sparrow, being in these little recesses, has to fall away from the jet first. And as the sparrow falls away from the jet, it might, hit the external fuel tank or your bomb rack or something else. Yeah, use up the centerline tank. Flip your jettison switch to the bottom, select the center pylon, push the red button to get rid of it. Just don't forget to, reset your jettison. Almost there. And we should have fighters up in about 3 minutes. So we will definitely have to deal with those on our way in. It's going to be a pain in the ass doing that with weapons on the wings, but we'll see what we can do against the MiG-21. We can at least knock one of them down with a Sparrow before we get in close. Yeah, you know, we might be able to attack the SA-6 first.
Arming complete.
See how it goes. That schematic is right control I, which is a digital, call it the EFB, the electronic flight bag. This can be enabled or disabled in the mission editor, so if it doesn't always pop up, it could be that whatever mission you're on is, well, the pilot wouldn't have access to this knowledge or information, so don't do it. But it does show like your current electronic system, where everything is. The fuel page I find the most useful, and then the engine flow page for temperatures. They did repack the chute, yes. The little RWR sensors are happy and smiling again. Let's reset our takeoff trim. Bullpup is fun. It's an interesting weapon system, and very much a product of its time. Bullpup C, the fat bullpups that you can only carry on the internal stations, or inboard stations rather, is more fun, but we'll use these. Reset to a repulse or a ripple of 1. Distance does not matter. If I'm flying someplace unknown, because in this case, I do, yes. Yeah, if it doesn't have to render the mirrors, it is a little more positive for performance, especially when I'm streaming and doing everything else. Graphics card's working hard enough broadcasting this for everybody. Okay, so the other thing I'm going to do is, like, if I was flying for realsies with the Shrike and I didn't know where targets were, you kind of have to guess. Like, I'm using the RWR system. I'm getting information from other folks. I think the Shrike is someplace, or the sensor same site is over here somewhere. What's the average altitude of there? And then that's what I would program into the WRCS. In this case, though, we know where our friends are. We know where Mr. Straight Flush is. You know, I should probably also realign the jet before I take off. Let's go ahead and do that real quick, too. Realigning the F-4 can be done in a couple of different methods. Step 1, though, is that Jester doesn't do it. There is an option to have him fine align the INS. I've not seen that work successfully, so I've always just done it myself. The first method is if you're sitting on the ground someplace and you have coordinates, which we've just done here by hitting left alt and clicking on the map. Standard DCS quality of life feature that's been chef's kiss good since the moment they implemented it. And we're going to be looking at the lat long standard for our coordinate set. The second method is to find a fixed point, like a known GPS update, and the pilot flies over it, gives the Wizzo the command for freeze, and the Wizzo at that point will engage the switch, hang onto it, and then let go as you fly over the point, and then the jet should be largely realigned. It is definitely a close enough feature. But just to give an example a little bit, we've been flying for about an hour. And according to this, it says that my waypoint is 25 miles away. It's still on, this one up here. And the reality is it's about 27 miles away. So we definitely have some drift and need to correct it. So we're going to hit 2 real quick and jump into the back seat, claustrophobic as it is. And we're going to come on over to the navigation panel. And we're going to disable the automatic INS calculations by putting this in set mode. And we're just going to double check it. 363500. We'll grab our position dial here at the top. 3638. Yeah, that's not right. We need to fix it. Press and hold. Work the middle mouse. $36.35. And we're going to let go. We see the latitude light has lit up in blue. We're going to repeat this process. Hang on a second, I just got to reset my head tracking a little bit. For longitude in our westing, which should be 11541. The last part is important, but you don't have enough fine control to really set it, so you just kind of get it close enough. 11541. 11542 is not right, so we're going to go ahead and bring it down to like 0.1. It is not quite close enough that that light illuminates, because it needs to be at least a full degree off. There is a rate limit as far as how much it can correct per second. So the blue light lets you know that it's going to be more than 1 second's worth of time. Once we've got these encoded, which if we were doing this while the aircraft was moving, this would be a fixed point in space. Like, for example, hey, I know where the TACAN's GPS coordinates are, because we've got that on our fancy kneeboard page somewhere that we would actually have if we were flying a real jet. As we cruise over the INS beacon, the Wizzo will press and hold this fix button until the lights go out, and then let it go when you get over the top of the point, and that will resync the jet. Resync the system to make sure that you got good alignment again. And we see now it's about 28 miles, which, based on errors from not quite being on top of my aircraft to not quite being on top of the actual circle, that's probably right. About 28 miles, yeah, 27.5 miles there. So that's probably pretty close. So we've corrected the drift for the jet, and we are once again in good shape, at least for the next 30 to 45 minutes or so. TACAN will almost always point exactly where it needs to go, as long as you can actually see the beacon. So if you need to use that in a pinch to actually fly home, you can rely on those directions, but the longer you fly, the worse your INS drift is going to get without corrections. And if you're relying upon that to go, oh yeah, no, I'm flying over here in the dark, in the bad weather and everything else, like, you should probably take the time for a full 8-minute alignment, and you should probably take the time to update your INS regularly while flying towards your target over known fixed points. Also, your fixed points should not be waypoints that you set for exactly the same reason. You know, if you use a waypoint, like, oh, you know, I'm going to go ahead and do waypoint 3. Well, where's waypoint 3 at? If you're flying directly to waypoint 3 and you're already out of alignment, when you go to fix your jet, you're going to be worse out of alignment. So what you need is a landmark that you can identify, or a TACAN beacon that you can identify. Those are going to be your best markers and references for it. So, you know, if I didn't have a TACAN beacon, you know, I could go with, hey, you know what, the topmost peak, the tallest peak on Mount Charleston, I'm going to overfly that, and that's going to be our INS reference. Pull out your map, you do a little bit of cross-checking, you go, okay, cool, that's my lat long standard. Let me go ahead and set the INS system up for that long before you get to the site. And then a few seconds before you overfly it, you give the freeze command, the Wizzo presses and holds that, you know, set button until the jet's completely realigned, and keeps holding it until the aircraft passes over the peak of the mountain, and then lets go. And now you're going to be back in alignment. And the Tomcat just doesn't have it at all. The Viggen, which was one of Heapler's first aircraft that they put in DCS, has INS drift as well. And you have to update that one a lot too. At about the same rate.
Engine's good. Airspeed's coming alive. 80 knots.
Was I just behind the start line there, Jester? Is that your problem? 150. We're fat, definitely going over 200. And now we're up.
All right, I got nails, 8 o'clock.
Steering flaps. It's a problem with the actual aircraft. Heapler modeled it correctly. In the time frame before GPS systems and satellite navigation and all of those kinds of features, you know, if you're using an internal gyro compass to try and figure out where you are, over time it incurs error. That's just kind of a natural way of things happening in the jet. Technically, the older model Tomcats should have the same problem, where they've got a little bit of INS drift over time. As a newer aircraft, it's less severe than it is in some of the older jets. But the reason why, like, the F-16, the F-18, and all of those don't have any of that is because they're also receiving information from GPS to correct where they are.
Right 50, 27 miles, 7,000.
Alright, so we definitely have friends up.
Negative IFF. That target is an enemy.
We're probably going to have to deal with them first. Hey, Wax, Overlord. What's the bogey dope?
Request bogey dope.
Alright, they're flying in a way where Overlord can't see them. And those are friendly contacts. We're still getting contact information for the jets that are out here protecting Alamo. Which is another site that I will occasionally attack, but I do like my training setup here at Yucca Pass.
Ah, damn, we've got mud. 11 o'clock. SA6.
Double bars over the contacts during an IFF scan are friendly. If combat tree is set to identify hostile aircraft, they will appear as single bars. So if you see that during one of Jester's sweeps, you'll know that, you know, that's something to pay attention to. If combat tree is set to either historical, which would only identify MiG-21s, as we were basically reading Vietnamese transponder codes, is how that system worked. Those would light up that way, but non-responsive contacts might be hostile. Now, in DCS's terms, they almost always are. So, it depends on the mission editor and how they set up the combat tree for the F-4. It's hard enough trying to find targets with this jet. I generally have it to find all aircraft with combat tree. Okay, maybe our friends didn't spawn. Nope, I know what'll summon them. I will just start doing something else, and then they'll appear. Inconveniently.
I have a new bogey. Left 50, 22 miles, 23,000. I can't do that.
That is a friend.
Good IFF, he's a friendly.
Set another mark.
Roger that. Steering set in TGT-1. Yep. Steering set in TGT-1.
All right. Now, the SA-6 does not give us a launch warning on the RWR for the F-4. MiG-23s don't give you a launch warning on the RWR for the F-4. Most modern aircraft won't give you a launch warning on the RWR. So what we'll end up using is handoff mode, and we're going to listen to the PRF, the pulse frequency, as interpreted by the RWR system. And when we hear a very high tone with it is most likely when the track radar is looking at us. The Shrike may actually change in pitch too, which is also a giveaway there for you. 35, 45 feet, so let's go ahead and set ourselves up. Shrike, 35, 40,
Copy.
tell Jester and close. I'm now in handoff mode, so I'm listening to the SA-6 as he's the guy with the diamond around him right now. We're in WRCS, loft mode for the Shrike, as the SA-6 is a longer range system. And we're going to need whatever edge we can get to try and make sure that our missile can get to him before he kills us. You can hear him now on the Shrike. The cross tells him what our relative position is. Go ahead and throttle up here a little bit, get some airspeed. I'm not going to drop the nose on him just yet, because again, if we're going to be using our cues to tell us when to loft.
We've got a bogey, right 10, 40 miles, 19,500.
Now we're going to need to be a little bit closer.
He paints, it is a friendly.
You can kind of see our town, and as the Shrike gets closer to the target, the tone gets louder. The crosshairs get centered. And this says we can shoot any time, so let's do it. Pick the nose up, holding the pickle button down. Waiting for that circle. Come on. Not going to wait for him to shoot at us. I'm just going to go ahead and turn around and get out of here. He has shot at us. Some countermeasures, driving down behind the hill. Shrike's got him. You can review that one a little later in TAC view to see that path of the missile the whole time, but broadly speaking, we lofted the missile, the seeker fell on top of the target and went, oh hey, I can see that, that looks like something I can kill, and then guided himself down to the target. As long as he's transmitting, which, in the case of an SA-6 or an SA-8, their search radar and their track radar are co-located, so there's always something emitting unless they turn the whole damn system off. Now we do have nails out here to our left, which should be our MiG-21 friends.
We have a new bogey. Right 5 degrees, 39 miles, 11,000. No IFF. Unable.
Overlord, 1.
Come on, Overlord.
OZ, 1. Request bogey dope. Clean.
I don't believe you, my friend. I don't. Maybe I should, but sweep the sky for a minute. All right. Let's continue for now, I guess. We'll get jumped by something, I'm sure it'll be fine. So we're gonna go direct. And there is an AGM-12, which is the bullpup in particular. It only shoots one at a time, so you can select as many pylons as you have bullpups, and it will just go through them sequentially.
Can't do that. Roger. Steering set in TGT-1.
Now, the bullpup is an old air-to-ground missile. It's lightweight in terms of its warhead, not so much its own size. It has flares on the back to help you with your steering, but it is a manual guided weapon, meaning that you're the one steering it. For pilots who have flown the Viggen before, this is similar to the Robot 05, which is also manual command line of sight. Basically, you have to have the nose of your aircraft pointed at the back end of the missile, and you will be steering the missile as the pilot towards the target using the flare for reference. It is every bit as inaccurate as you're thinking about right now, subject to how good you are as a pilot and how good you are at using that particular weapon. We did have a bullpup, the Bullpup C, that was a much larger warhead and could be used against area target structures, that kind of thing.
Left 30, 25 miles, 21,000. IFF is positive, he's a buddy.
Okay. Let's make one more call here to AWACS before we go in.
Overlord, 1-1. OZ, 1. Request bogey dope.
That's behind us. All right. Effective range is about 10 miles, which is also about as far as you can see to try and identify a target. We're going to look at those two MTLBs
Okay,
down there.
contact. Left 5 degrees, 36 miles, 25,500.
And here we go. Rifle. Weapon comes
friendly
out,
target getting
the
eyes
flare
on
lights,
return.
and now we can steer it. I'm using the hand control unit for the pilot to do so. And we got it in there. I know I made that one look easy, but it was basically a like full deflection up and then trying to put the flare on top of the target and keep it there and make sure that it's kind of getting to where it needs to go. And we'll repeat that against another set of targets, as we do have one more bullpup. But you're basically flying in a straight line more or less towards your target, either right behind the missile or slightly offset from it, and providing steering commands until the missile hits the target area. It's a good historical weapon for doing historical type missions. It's nice to understand how that thing works, but it is also very much an acquired taste. All right, we got a couple of vehicles out there. Let's go ahead and shoot at them. Rifle. And motor's on. We can steer it. Little left, little up, little left. And we got close. Yeah, it would have been a great tool for the F-100 to have, because historically they did, but the Project Highwire version that we've got, the modernization program for that, use that term loosely for that jet, took that ability away. So while we do have Shrikes available, we don't have Bullpup. Alright. So let's go ahead and drop some snake eyes over a target. We're going to use direct bombs. Set it up for continuous. Now, coincidentally, these settings here, the letter ones, are all pylon stations selected, one per rack. Salvo, and not singles, so it's not singles and pairs, it's pylon, salvo, and continuous. Air to ground mode. $140 mils. And direct. And try and deal with the tanks that are on top of that other gray area there.
Overlord 1-1, Uzi 1, request bogey dope.
The Red Flag 81-2 campaign by Reflected, if you're serious about playing around with the F-4, is a very, very good set of missions to show you how a lot of these systems function in practice. It doesn't tell you how to do any of the weapons and equipment there for it. Only that, you know, hey, we're going to be attacking this target today. You're going to be doing this kind of method with it. Make it happen. But it is a good campaign to give you an honest-to-God Red Flag experience. And it gives you some good skins, too. Some of them from the TV movie Red Flag: The Ultimate Game from about 1980, which was shot and filmed on Nellis and on the range. All right, about 500 knots. And it looked like a good pass. Yeah, I found the red flag one for the F-4 to be very, very similar to something like Speeding Angels. Very enjoyable. We got another little vehicle down here next to this house. Let's go hose him down real quick. And since we got time, we'll go ahead and grab some TV weapons. Throw some walleyes and hobos. Guns, guns. Anytime the autopilot shut off, it'll give you a master caution about it. Just tap the reset button a couple times.
Overlord 1-1, Uzi 1, request bogey dope.
Woo! 302 for 22. Our MiG friends did show up. We got 5,000 pounds. Let's go throw hands. I really don't care about those, buddy. They are no factor. $300 for 23 at 15,000.
I'm showing nails 10
There
o'clock.
they are.
And nails 10 o'clock.
Alright, things are going to happen quick. We're using F model Sparrows. Not quite the newest, but they do need 2 seconds of having locked onto the target time in order to get good guidance from the radar. We're using E model Sparrows of any variant. They need 4 seconds, which is why you hear Jester count 4 potato.
Heads up, new bogey. Left 35, 24 miles, 16,000. Friendly target getting IFF returns.
Here's the bandits there, buddy. Let's go cage mode and long press.
Locked. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi. Shoot!
Box
No.
1.
Wilco.
Good track on the Sparrow. Come on. Out he goes.
Bandit is down. We have a bandit. Fish bed. 12 o'clock. 1 mile.
What I ended up doing was caging the radar, put the pipper over the top of the target, and short press on the Jester acquisition. come on, buddy, where are we going? And that told him to lock the target under the glass. You already way out there? Such a tiny jet. Come on, let's not lose him in the frame. G's are still very high. The air refueling button that we were using for the Maverick. Box 2 is what we're using to uncage the seeker head on the Maverick or Sidewinder. Out he goes.
The bandit is going down.
We'll go ahead and slide our selector wheel down through the bottom arc there. That tells Jester, go ahead and go back to regular search. Whew. Alright, so it all happened super quick. We'll talk a little bit about what I did in that. Now that I'm also not trying to fight at the same time. As we get set up on a cruise back to Creech. So first things, Jester did not find him on his own with a search. They were small enough aircraft.
How's our fuel state?
Maybe a little too close. Otherwise, you're not able to really see them by the time we got into 5 miles. Happened super fast there on that. What I did was I actioned the cage button. Which bore sights the radar immediately in air-to-air mode. At that point, I put the pipper over the top of the target and did a short press on the Jester contextual button.
Nose. Roger.
Or no, a long press rather on the button. Short press changes the aspect. If you do a long press on it, that tells Jester, I want to try and attack that target. Whatever's in the bore sight, grab it. He was able to find the target. We had the maneuvering ring show up for the limits on the Sparrow. And we were able to get that weapon off the rail in just a couple of seconds. Got good guidance and off it went. We can use the nose wheel steering button to enter an auto acquisition mode, which has a 5-mile range. And your weapon selector determines which box it is searching in. See if I can find the kneeboard page here with it that shows that real quick too. A lot of useful pages there. There we go. So you have a horizon line, a left corridor, center corridor, and right corridor. It will scan a little bit under the pipper, but for the most part it is scanning up in the vertical. Right now it is scanning the left section because I'm in guns. If I go Sidewinder, it looks at the center section. And if I go radar missile or Sparrow, it's scanning the right. Cage it again just to center it. It's useful if you're in like a rolling dogfight to try and find a target because it was scanning up relative to the facing of the aircraft. So up for here is, you know, out here if I'm in a turn fight trying to catch this guy. And of course there's, you know, center, right, and left for where it's trying to look. You can also get Jester to go back to regular scan with a double tap.
Okay, sanitizing the sky again.
On your contextual button. We use the air refueling button just like we were using to steer the Maverick to uncage the seeker head of the Sidewinder when Sidewinders are selected. And you can get that higher tone. Now, something to bear in mind with the Sidewinder is if you're doing a historical mission and you're using ancient Sidewinders that are not L's or M's, they are not going to be able to uncage in that regard. So you do kind of have to shoot with the weaker tone and hope for the best. You can still use the cage button to try and put it into the higher tone, but you do have to keep them manually in about where the bore sight cross would be for the F-14, slightly above that pipper. And then also keep in mind your G restraints. You know, the older the Sidewinder, the less G's you can have on the jet, or the missile is just not going to track when it comes off the rail. We're using all aspect L's today, which does give us a little bit more wiggle room. But the intermittent sounds that you're hearing when I had the weapon uncaged was that it didn't have as good of a lock as it could have. And pulling that many G's, the missile would not have been able to get out in front of the aircraft to kill it. So I waited until he flattened out at the right moment and let him have it with the Sidewinder. The AOA aural tone is normal on landing. If you're on AOA, it should be a loud, like, continuous beep the whole way through. We are coming in kind of flat, but hopefully buttery smooth. Chutes deployed. Being very careful with the nose wheel steering. I'll try and actually fly one on AOA here for the next landing. Seat back down. I don't have too much in the way of targets left over on that point. But we will carry on with our guided missile or guided weapon program for today. Definitely don't need any more Shrikes, but I'm going to keep the Sidewinders in case we meet more friends, because we're probably due for some here soon. So let's go up with GBU 12. And GBU 12. And a pave spike. You know, why not? We'll bring up the GPU 5 30mm gun pod that they gave us this last patch on the center line. And do a 2,000 pound. Well, actually, hobos and walleye are going to be about the same, so let's just do walleye for both. Walleye is smaller. Walleye 1 anyway. Walleye 2 that you can carry on the internal stores, pylons. Most of your heavy weapons are going to be on those, I keep saying internal, I mean inboard. Most of your heavy weapons are going to be the inboard pylons of the jet for your guided gear.
Request rearming. Copy.
Alright, so while that's doing all that for us, let's see what exactly we got left hanging out here at this point. Do have some scattered armor. That was not killed by our sneak I passed there along the road. Do have a few more Sparkas that are out there. Some Sparkas, some BMPs. Yeah, we got a few things. We'll be able to do another full pass on everything. And then we'll take a minute and we'll use the TACView program to review our flight. Talk about some last minute closing things there, and then we will wrap up here over the next hour. I am looking forward to all of the BU stuff. And we should get that. This week, like Wednesday-ish, I think. See what the note here on that one says. That's my note for that one. July 22nd. 22nd we'll have the BU. Sounds good. Appreciate the VODs. You can catch the YouTube channel there too. There's other videos on that, where I do basically all of the same stuff that I'm doing here with this one today. So most Saturdays I'm here. The only times I am not here on Saturday mornings is if I end up having to work the day job, which does happen from time to time. But most Saturdays I can be found here at 9 a.m. Pacific time. And then again, Tuesday evenings for just general flying at DCS, which is also a good time. Thanks for showing up. Take care. Alright, we're almost refueled. We'll go out and make our next sortie. We might have more MiG friends available too. You can go distribute some extra parts over the desert.
1-1. Uzi 1. Request bogey dope. Uzi 1. Overlord 1-1. Clean.
Yeah, let's go ahead and realign the jet while we're here. It's been another little bit. 36, 34, 56. We are a little off. And 115, 40, 33.
Refueling complete.
I'm at the limits of my head tracking sensor. One 41, 11540. Not bad, but enough.
Rearming complete.
All right, so we got some walleyes, we got some laser guided bombs, and we got a big gun pod.
13,000 knots.
The gun pod is the younger sibling, or smaller sibling, I suppose, to the Gal-8 Avenger found on the A-10, with a lot less ammunition in it than the A-10, but it does give you a 30mm attack option there for a gun pod, which is nice.
Uzi 1. Overlord 1-1. Bra 036. 450 at 12,000 knots.
Let's go ahead and get our TV weapons warmed up, which we can do on the ground by selecting the appropriate pylons and being in direct and TV mode. Now, where we used 45 mils for the Maverick, we're going to use 17 mils for either the targeting pod, which we're also carrying, or the walleye. Hobos uses the same thing. Any of the electro-optical bombs use the same 17 mil dot setting to align the seeker head with the pipper. Three dots down on the tab, or trim rather, for takeoff. Come up again for round 3.
Engine's good. Airspeed's coming along. 80 knots. Okay, 100 knots. Nails 8 o'clock.
Okay, so while we're cruising around this time here, let's talk about some limitations with TV guided weapons. By which I don't mean the the physical ones of, you know, you got to have visibility to your target. It's got to be daytime, or you got to drop flares over the top of your target. I'm going to talk specifically about how those weapons are employed on this jet and the things that this jet does, and Jester in particular, from the moment that you turn on TV Direct. You'll note that Jester is not sweeping with the radar. It's because he's not looking at the radar. He is looking at a TV screen in the back, so he's not searching for targets, he's not scanning, he's not doing any of that kind of stuff with the radar.
Nails, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock.
He will listen to the RWR, and you can listen to the radio and everything else, but if you're relying on him to sweep the sky with the radar, he has turned the radar to standby mode and is not looking. The second thing is that it takes 3 minutes to get those weapons ready to fight. It's not like the F-16 or the F-18 where you do the 3-minute countdown, and then once the weapon's ready to go, you can toggle away from it and come back to it later, and it'll be up and ready to fight. If you move away from the weapon for whatever reason, for example, we're cruising out to the target and we get jumped by a SAM site, we need to use a Shrike. We change our weapon selector wheel over to deal with the Shrike, we shoot at the Shrike at the target. Or if we get jumped by an aircraft and we have to change from air to ground to air and try and deal with that fight. If you go back to your TV weapons, you know, you might have a display, but the weapon is not armed and ready to go. It's going to be another 3 minutes while those weapons warm up before they can be employed. So TV weapons in particular, regardless of type, whether they are GB-8s or Walleyes or Mavericks, if you're going to pull them up to use them, you're kind of committed to their use. It's one of the reasons why I don't carry Mavericks all the time when I'm flying this jet, unless I am doing a particular mission or sortie where, number one, I know that's what I'm going to be using, and number two, I've got other aircraft to protect me going into the target area because I'm committed. I'm committed to using those weapons if I've turned them on. Or I'm going to have to wait another 3 minutes before those are able to be used. So if I'm cruising somewhere, I'm going to need somebody that's going to be there to deal with the SAM threat systems, either before I arrive or as part of a package. If I've got somebody who's escorting me who is looking for air contacts and able to deal with air threats, you know, that way all I have to do is focus on getting close to the target and employing my weapons against the target. Because otherwise, you might run into a time on target problem of, you know, I'm ready to fight or I need to fight and this target has to be destroyed by X time. And because I was on my Mavericks and then off my Mavericks and then on my Mavericks again, you know, now my time has been pushed forward by 3 minutes. Or pushed back, rather, by 3 minutes. Because I'm late. Alright, so Walleye and Hobos use the same targeting optics. It is a 1x sight. There is no zoom on it. And these are employed the same way. You're going to get a little bit more range out of Walleye, whether it's Walleye 1 or Fat Albert Walleye 2. Because it has bigger wings to glide with. The GB-8 does not, so it's a little shorter on the range. But that's okay, because by the time you're able to actually lock the target, you should be in range or just about in range for either of those systems. I'll roll in towards our target area. It does rely on the same daytime contrast lock. And let's go ahead and pick this piece of armor that's got some extra things around it. I've actioned the front trigger, and now we get a little black square that tells us the maneuvering limits of the sensor for the Walleye. And then we press pickle, off it goes. And Walleye is now guiding itself to the target. Needs no further input. I wouldn't call it fire and forget because it's not quite the mantra there for it, but it is fire and release and forget, or release and forget rather. Kaboom. Now if it significantly loses contrast, for example, if you're using this at night and either you or somebody else has come in and put marker flares over the top of the target so that it is illuminated, and you were able to get a good contrast lock with the bomb. But, you know, it either had to fly for a long time, or you dropped late, or the flares were too low. Whatever the case was, the flares go out, and it loses contrast. The bomb will stop guiding. Now, ballistically, it should probably still get to where it's going if the target hasn't moved. But if you are, you know, trying to target like a moving tank column, and it loses the contrast lock on it, it could miss. I'm going to go ahead and roll in again, and we'll try and attack that BMP that's alone to himself on the current near side of the hill that's behind the cloud there. Drop a couple more laser guided bombs and we'll go through Jester again since we got some folks that are watching to make sure that the targeting pod and laser methods and everything else are working as intended. Finish up with a little bit of gun pod time and then land, jump out to TAC view and review our total flight. Okay, instead of Mr. BMP, we'll target whoever is left in this group, which is nobody. Oh, no, it's one vehicle. And Pickle. Go forth, Wally Wallerton. Okay. We'll set up for one bomb. Target find. And our bombs. While we're on our little orbit here, let's go ahead and try and figure out what's our average altitude here. It's about 4,200 or 4,020 feet. So we're going to pull up the bombing table with right control B. I'm going to go to target find. We are dropping GBU 12s. Call it 450 knots true. Call it about 15,000 feet. And again, our average altitude is somewhere around 4,020 feet. So let's just do that. Tell Jester and close. Pave spike is ready to go. Now, Jester in the F-4 does not have any interactions at the moment with the pod that are meaningful. So you're going to have to steer the pod a little bit yourself. But the biggest interaction that Jester does have is programming the WRCS, which is the weapons release computer, with the information that I've given him, which will in turn give you the bomb fault line information on the pave spike display when you go to make your attack. We're going to go ahead and come in. We'll try and attack that last and lingering bits of armor. Or maybe a sparker or something. See what we can find. And again, just to cover it, the important controls here are the Wizzo antenna control slew commands to steer the pod, and the half action, full action, and challenge buttons for the Wizzo antenna hand control unit. Cruise over here, we're going to use the challenge button to zoom in. Half action to put the pod into area track. Full action to engage laser, which also resets it. Sometimes you gotta be careful with how fast you're working those, especially if you're not quite using an actual two-stage trigger. And then it's going to be a matter of flying steady, which we're going to reset, because we had to fiddle with that for a minute. But sometimes that just does happen when you're using the Wizzo commands, where when you do the full action on the trigger, it will do like moves or step through half action again. So if it ever just resets what your pod is looking at, that's why that happened. And it appears we are low on hydro. It's going to make it fun for when we come into land, but that's a future problem. Pick up some knots here real quick. This should give us more time. Let's go ahead and zoom in. Here's our target area that I want. Half action, full action, lasers armed and on. I'm gonna go with this guy right here. Pressing and holding the pickle button.
480.
And I'm trying to fly the dots here a little bit. I'm also going to drop the nose of the aircraft just to make sure that the bomb captures the laser as it comes off the jet. But the bomb fall line is ticking down. When those two meet, the bomb will come off.
520 knots.
We're a little fast. I'm going to try and slow us down a bit.
Speed is 500. 480 coming up.
And we were too close. We were too fast on that drop. Too fast and too low. I'm going to extend here and try and do this one a little more correctly. By telling Jester what we're doing here is basically telling the pod where the bomb fall line is supposed to go, when is the weapon release point. So you do want to try and fly that as accurately as you tell him to, in order for the bomb to come off the jet in a way that it's going to be comfortable to fly to strike your target successfully. So we've been consistent, we've been about 500 knots. So we're just going to go ahead and set our release speed to 500 knots true, which is what airspeed he's telling you. He's not telling you indicated airspeed, he's telling you true airspeed and knots, because that is a much easier to see gauge for the Wizzo than it is for the pilot. The pilot's is hidden back behind your gun arm status and weapon selector status. All right. This guy.
$550.
The laser's on. And impact. It is always easier to designate for somebody else than it is for yourself, but it is possible to designate for yourself. We do have a couple more bombs left on the jet, so let's just go ahead and keep on with the attack. We continue to eliminate threats. We got at least one more piece of armor there. We'll try and get him next. And then maybe that guy there near the SA-8. Do a couple quick gun strafes and go home, and then review it in TAC-View. TAC-View is a fine program. I use it a lot to help look at my own performance and help assess the performance of others when I'm doing things with the rest of the squadron. Also helps answer the question of, why did I just spontaneously combust? Surely there wasn't anything out there, and then you find out there was.
Overlord 1-1, Uzi 1, request bogey dope.
Those are going to be our friends at Alamo. Sweep on down towards our target. Zoom in, half action, full action. Good capture. He looks like he's right out there.
And that's 530. Passing through 510.
Oh, come on, bomb.
Speed's 500. Speed 490.
Oh, I hit the fat finger the wrong button. That bomb fell way short. I half-actioned the trigger when I was bringing the hand back to hit the challenge button, zoom the pod back out. It's a lot more difficult to use the laser with yourself in the F4. It's usually a lot easier of a time if I've got somebody in the backseat working it as a human being, so they can focus on that and I can focus on just flying the jet.
Ooh, 480.
Oh, that's way too fast and low. I'm not doing that. Let's extend. And we'll come back in on it.
We'll go.
Okay, zoom in a little bit. Got our target. That looks good. We'll fly the dot.
There's 450. We're at 460.
That bomb's hooked. Okay, guns armed. Let's use that 30 mil briefly and then we will go ahead and cruise on home. Probably RTB at Nellis, and then we will review the flight there with TacView. Talk about TacView as a program, as we often do on the stream. And then call it there. Alright, so we know that we've got a Sparka out here. Looks like him. That's not a good lineup. Just going to go ahead and push out and we'll come back on him. careful with our gas, though. We'll end up going to land at Creech instead. Which, while not the worst, is also not what's intended. Alright. No tracers on the 30 mil gun pod. And we did hit him. It's not a lot. Of course, we didn't need to hit him a lot. He's a Sparka. And now he's an ex-Sparka. Alright, 3,400 pounds. Let's go ahead and start flying back for Nellis Air Force Base. Out here to the southeast. And as we get over the mountain that's between us and the Vegas Valley, probably Charleston. That's in the direct line of sight there for us. Yeah, it is. No, it's not. Charleston's down there. Yeah, we should be just about in view of the TACAM beacon here in a moment. My airspeed is low enough that it thinks that I should be getting ready for the landing gear. Yeah, it's a wheels warning light to let you know that, you know, if you're actually trying to come in and land, you should probably prepare for that. The other thing it's doing too is it's turning the light bulb on and off on the inside of the handle, causing it to flicker, and as the wheels light is also blinking. I've noticed that it just kind of does that after a while in flight too, which could also be like an electrical systems fault somewhere in the jet.
What's our fuel level?
Because I am both definitely high enough and fast enough that it should not be giving me a wheel warning.
Alright, scanning the sky again. New bogeys. Alright, I'm identifying. We have a bogey, bra, left 55, 37 miles, 23,500. And a friendly, bra, left 50, 27 miles, Angels 21.
Yeah, the graceful degradation feature is probably one of my favorites with the F-4. Which also makes the damage modeling very nice. I do like that 30mm gun pod. It is derpy as all hell. Okay, it's just a little guy with a big old gun.
We have a new bogey. Right 15, 35 miles, 3,000. The target paint's definitely a friendly.
I mean, you missed the 20mm one that I did earlier that was just... and I killed a BMP-2. Just rolled it right on through it. And just had a couple of passes where I wasn't as aligned as I should have been with the 30. It's close enough, though, that the tiny funnel that is the gun pod overlapped enough with the Sparka that killed it.
We have a friendly, 10 o'clock, 13 miles.
That's true. We'll get there. I'll keep working with it. Okay, so problems time. That utility hydro issue we were talking about earlier
9 o'clock, 9 miles.
is definitely going to come into play as we get ready to land. As we will soon see if it is just a matter of it being a stuck gauge or if I'm actually on low hydro. Rather than a nice smooth overhead brake over Nellis, I'm going to take the time to make sure that everything is working properly and do a straight in. 1,800 pounds. Plenty of gas. That would be a nice feature if Heapler implemented it, was a, left click on the gauge to tap. Almost a runway heading. Step one. Or the gear coming down. Looks good. Flaps and slats. Oh, they're partially down. It's better than I would have hoped.
Oh, shit, looks like new bogeys. Alright then, let's take a look at their IFF. Alrighty, gear, flaps, pressure, warning lights, anti-skid.
Glad I raised the seat so I could look down the nose.
$1,000. 500. $300.
Flaps aren't coming up. They're commanded to go up, but they're not coming up. Yeah, utility hydro is basically done.
Roger. Wilcox in. Roger.
All right, we're home. Let's go take a look at the tech view. And we'll review our flight and talk about the things we did today. All right, TACView is a good program. It's a free program that you can use to get telemetry or information that is taken from games like DCS or Falcon BMS. There's a couple of other games that it's associated with as well, in terms of it having maps that you can look at and use and receive information from the game. And as long as the server host has it set up in such a way where there's no delay on it, because in PvP situations, it can absolutely give you a God's eye view in almost real time if you're using it in that way, unlike a second monitor, so that's no good. So a lot of PvP servers will have a delay if they have information being given at all. But for what we're doing here today, especially for training purposes, no such delay. Yeah, it does work for X-Plane and a couple of others. But what we're doing is just going to take a look at our total flight today. Kind of fast forward to the different events that are here. We have our Intrepid F-4. And our first thing that we did was we came up, we were using the WRCS to loft a Shrike, but we got very close to the SA-8 site. And I swapped over to direct and unfortunately pitched the nose up too high. As we're about to see, the Shrike goes out. And its narrow 3-degree seeker head, it's following a ballistic trajectory, and it does not see the SA-8 that's down here until it's almost entirely too late. And at that point, it can't hook down fast enough to try and attack the target. So it overshot and hit the ground. Not the worst deal, though. We were able to come back in and attack it with M117s using dive toss, pitch up, capture the target area with the radar, send out a couple of bombs. We got tracers that were coming back up after us, and destroyed the SAM site. With that out of the way, the next target that we had was the KS-19 gun battery. And we were going to drop a GBU-10 on. The weapon came off the rail. We're watching the screen there, maneuvering away from all of the gun platforms that are still shooting at us. But it is soon too late for that whole site as the 2,000-pound monstrosity cracks into them there. Now the Sparkas are still up, but they are now not radar directed at all. They don't have any help from the other members of their group. This one I kind of wanted to watch, though. I wanted to see how badly we overshot it, because we were coming in and we were not steep enough. So the bomb itself only has like a 17-degree seeker head, and it does not see the laser at all. It overshot it as we were too close to the target. And then our bombs, we had our bombing table. We didn't go back to the bombing table and tell Jester to reset the airspeed and the intended release and everything else, so our aim was off. Been using the radar-directed bombing mode. But we were able to fix the problem and get in there with an M117. Last one we had on the jet. I knew this was our Maverick attack. Yep, there it goes. We targeted a Sparka. Just in and out. Came back rearmed. Was our next event. Next event was a Shrike. So this is against the SA-6 site. And we'll watch it from his perspective here as we're coming in. The green line, when you have two entities selected, indicates that there is unbroken line of sight between those two targets. So he knows we're there. 13 miles, 12 miles. The Shrike comes off the rail. And I rolled over and immediately started to leave. anticipating he probably shot at me. But as I was diving down, the missile, which is trying to intercept me, so it has to fly out in front of me somewhere, hit the mountain. Shrike, meanwhile, we back up to look at this part. From Shrike's perspective, he goes up, and as he starts floating down, goes, oh yeah, no, I can see him. And he is down. That's kind of the lofted mode there for the Shrike, is that you're throwing the weapon ballistically, and as the weapon is falling down ballistically, it should find your target and kill it, if the parameters were good. So with the SA-6 out of the way, we came down and fired Bullpup, which is the manual command guided missile. It has a flare on the back, and it uses basically like RC airplane type commands between the transmitting aircraft, the launch platform, and the weapon. The antenna's on the back there next to the flares, so you have to be behind it in order to provide guidance. But we're basically steering it and watching the flare and trying to have the flare overlap with where the target is. And we're able to kill a pair of MTLBs with that Bullpup. Pushed out, came back again. Repeated the Jester against a different target. This one wasn't as accurate, but it was able to put a little bit of spall on the other target. This was our Mark 82 Snake Eye Pass. See how well we did with this one. 500 knots, about 500 feet AGL. And we damaged everything kind of in that area. And we fired 150 rounds. We hit the BMP 78 times with 150 rounds, and he was dead. Now, this was our dogfight, if such could be called. We caught the lead bandit with the Sparrow, and I got him in full cage mode with the radar. Put the Pipper over the target, had Jester in cage so it was bore sighted. Told him to lock the target under the bore sight. Then Fox 1. F model Sparrows take 2 seconds before they are ready to shoot. E models take 4. M models don't have any of that kind of restriction. You could throw an M as soon as you lock onto the target. Wonders of solid state electronics. We're chasing this guy as he gets into the turn fight. We are getting into better and better position behind him. I think at this moment we do have intermittent Sidewinder lock, but you know, you can see his rate of change, and I've got 4G sustained on the jet. That's a little too much to try and hope for that weapon to actually get out and hit that target. So I need him to unload a little bit so that I can unload, and then we can take our shot. And right about here, we do it. You can see I'm at 4Gs. 3, 2, 2.5, 1.9, and the missile comes off the rail. And it's got him. The trick with it, especially in this particular scenario, is that the Sidewinder missile is going to fly straight for a couple of seconds before it'll start guiding. The M model does this a little quicker. The X model does this basically off the rail. So the two newer model Sidewinders, very good. You've got a lot more tolerance to let those weapons go. But even those missiles, if you are pulling entirely too much when those come off the rail, keeping in mind that if you're in a 9G turn and you're trying to engage somebody who's not in good parameters out in front of you with that jet, the missile might have to pull 50 or more Gs to try and get out in front of him before unloading and then attacking the target successfully. So it may not be able to make that turn, and older model Sidewinders definitely won't. So keep those kinds of thoughts in mind and be a little more patient before pulling the trigger on the missile. So in this case, we waited. We were able to unload the jet, get down under 2 Gs. More than enough for the Sidewinder, but you can see it kind of flies more or less in a straight line where it's expecting the target to be in its cone, and then it completes guidance, shoots him down. Landed at Creech for round 3, which is where some of you fine folks have shown up from. In this one, we're coming in with Walleye. Bonk. And another Walleye. Got rid of the last ZU-23 in that group. There's our GBU-12. Hooked almost right off the rail. Not enough to kill him, though. I think we might have missed the last couple of seconds of that bomb's flight, and it threw it off enough that it damaged him instead of killed him. If I remember that one right. This one is definitely better hooked. And since we are not flying in such a way where we are out maneuvering the pod's ability to steer, comes right down on top of him, takes him out. Remember, bomb number 3 was kind of bad. Yeah, it dropped way short. Bomb number 4 successfully struck a target. Came in to do some guns play. Fired 56 shells and hit him 24 times on the first pass. Fired 67 rounds on the next burst and hit him 20 times. So I'm terribly sorry I wasted 23 rounds on that one. I could have killed half of another vehicle there, Chief. And then touchdown. And that was it. A lot of things that I like to review using TAC-View, especially are dogfights in particular, especially when folks definitely lose the target for one reason or another. Seeing what kind of SAM weapons come up, where weapons kind of win if we thought it was an erroneous drop. Oh yeah, no, you're not wrong. been getting better. Flying is always a learning process. You will never fully master anything when it comes to DCS. There is always something new to learn. And, you know, always something to improve, always something to tighten up, always something to try and use and get better at and refine. And those are perishable skills, especially when it comes to the flight sim community. So keep those things in mind. Keep your spirits up. Just because you missed out on it today doesn't mean you won't get it tomorrow. And it's just good, smooth practice before getting into a spot where you can employ it in a setting where it is certainly a lot more threatening. Now, this place could have killed us a lot. And there have been times where I've been hit by a KS-19 round and had a 100mm wide hole tore in my aircraft, or struck by an S-60, or failed to hit the SA-8 and got killed by it. Now, any number of other problems can happen. But today was a good day. Today was a good flight. We did our job. With that, folks, we should be back on Tuesday. Probably do some Tomcat-related things. We fly around a little bit on one of the other missions with the boys. See what we can do there. This coming Saturday should be another Saturday on for doing Pilum Teaches DCS, and that is definitely going to be with the F-14BU, because that's going to be our first weekend with that jet. So we'll be taking a look at the Sparrowhawk, taking a look at JDAMs, and doing all of those kinds of fun things. So stay tuned there for that. With that, always ask for consent. Try to communicate as best you can with your partners. Try to be genuinely decent human beings. And I will catch up with you next time. Thanks for watching, folks. Thanks for the continued support. I very much appreciate it. And we will see you next time. Pilum out.